folks, this is Mark Vina, CEO of SmartTech Research. SmartTech Research is proud to have Aura sponsoring my SmartTechCheck podcast. Aura security software is the all-in-one digital safety net for the whole family. It's literally like having a personal cyber guardian that protects all of the devices in your home on a 24/7 basis. What's more, its AI functionality stands out as it constantly learns and adapts to threats, keeping your family and you safe around the clock. It's a must-have solution for anyone serious about online security. Stay tuned for a special no-obligation promo offer for Aura that will give you cybersecurity peace of mind.
Hi, I'm Anna with SmartTech Research. Whether you're browsing the web, checking emails, monitoring your children's online behavior, spam calls and identity protection, and conducting online transactions, Aura has your back, ensuring a secure and seamless experience every time. Aura's comprehensive security solutions are compatible with Microsoft Windows, Apple Mac OS, Android, iOS, and iPad OS devices. For an exclusive 14-day no-obligation trial version of Aura, use the on-screen QR code or visit the website shown here. Aura is the smart, simple way to stay safe online.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vina, host of the SmartTechCheck podcast. Today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. Dell is a global technology leader. They integrate AI across its products and services to empower businesses with data-driven insights. With a mission centered on innovation and accessibility, Dell harnesses AI to enhance productivity, optimize operations, and drive digital transformation, fostering a smarter, more connected world for organizations of all sizes. Joining me for what will be obviously a very fun interview to do about where Dell Technologies is headed this year and beyond in the area of AI is Matt Baker, the company's SVP of Artificial Intelligence Strategy. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mark, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, AI is everywhere. It's in the news, especially this week. I mean, yeah. We're gonna go into some specific topics. We were chatting before the podcast. I used to work for Dell years ago, and in full disclosure, it's a remarkable company that's obviously transformed itself multiple times over the last 20 years or so. And what I love about Dell is that they bring value to new categories that drive productivity much faster than a lot of people, I think, tend to realize. And we'll certainly get into that. But this has been a big week, obviously, from an AI standpoint. And let's face it, I think that the NVIDIA announcement, it just validated how incredibly robust the category is. And I'll just remind everybody, it's not just going to be the NVIDIA show over the next few years. I think Dell will find a way to leverage its value proposition in the space. But Matt, maybe we could just comment on that before we go into the topics I want to discuss.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, lots of big news this week, this year. I mean, it's been the year of AI since the sort of shot heard around the world with ChatGPT.
Yes.
It didn't just start then, but certainly in terms of it becoming front page news and accessible to millions and millions, maybe a billion users, it's been exciting. This week, obviously, NVIDIA posted some amazing results. They're a great partner of ours, and we build solutions with them. But we obviously build solutions with lots of folks. They're a critical partner. But what we're focused on is building out a real robust open ecosystem, because what we find at the beginning of these big revolutions, this is a decade plus I think movement in the industry, and when that happens in the early stages, there's innovation happening everywhere. So we want to sort of host that open ecosystem so that we can deliver maximum value.
No, we're gonna get into that. So don't steal the thunder.
All right, I won't.
No, that's fine. We're gonna get into that. But first of all, let's what I always like to do with people who've done are doing my podcast for the first time is talk a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
So let me turn the reins over to you and just give us a couple of minutes on Matt Baker.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've been at Dell for 19 years now, so I sort of grew my second part of my career here. At Intel, I did product roles, but also I was a practitioner. I was in Intel's IT organization for 7 of those 10 years. Right. So that's sort of having that practitioner insight is very helpful when sort of coming up with pragmatic solutions. Just about me, I grew up in Maryland. I went to a really small little college. I studied political science and English literature, which everyone's like, well, how are you doing this? Well, fortunately, I got a really great general education there, and I've had a lot of great on the job experiences. And especially Dell has really put a lot of trust in me to help shape the business. Roles inside of Dell have largely been strategy roles, from just focused on storage strategy through to our ISG business, which is sort of the data center products. Most recently, I was head of corporate strategy for 2 years, and they've since plucked me out and said, Matt, go after this AI space in partnership with the new, the guy who took over for me, Vivek, as well as our global CTO, John Rose, and sort of help shape the direction of the company and make it real, both for the company itself, but also make it real for our customers.
Right. Well, I have a lot of fondness for you already, because I was a history major where I went to school, and not a lot of liberal arts majors end up in tech jobs, but I think we have common backgrounds. So that's always interesting to chat about. And that means you can write, which I like that, because people who,
it does. It does.
That's an entirely different topic that I've discovered in the work that I'm doing, that a lot of senior executives have challenges writing sometimes, but that's a different story. Let us go into the first topic I want to hit. And I kind of hinted at this at the beginning. What is Dell's approach to AI at a macro level? There's a slide that we'll bring up in a second, but give us your perspective, Matt, on, the unique value proposition. I think in many ways, Dell is approaching the category in the traditional way it approaches other areas, whether it's storage, PCs, other devices. So it's kind of the same formula, but applied obviously to AI. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, well, interestingly, in a lot of ways, it is similar, which is we're focused on creating pragmatic solutions that are for everybody, not just the largest of the large, but as a tech company, we service, yes, the largest of the large companies of the world, but we also serve small, medium-sized businesses, and our goal is to make technology accessible to everybody. We sometimes say, democratizing IT
Yes.
technologies, right? But this case with AI, and what I think this framework highlights, is a little bit different in that not only are we participating in this space as a solutions provider, and I'll talk specifically about what elements of this are for that, but we're also embracing this technology to reinvent the company. And so I historically have been focused on selling solutions, building solutions for customers. In this role, I'm sort of back to my roots that I talked about at Intel, which is I'm looking at both how we apply AI technologies inside of our business, and then most interestingly, we're sort of finding that we're a little bit ahead of that bow wake of enterprise adoption. And so the interplay between the work I'm doing for how we use AI internally is really having a day by day influence on the types of solutions we bring to market and how we work with our partners, because they're sort of observing the same adoption patterns at the same time we are. So let me break it down. Internally, we use AI built into our products, and we've been doing this for quite a while. Think about the machine learning algorithms inside of a storage array that help lay out the bits to be, most performant, most efficient, etc. We're continuing to do that, and now integrating Gen AI capabilities into solutions like Cloud IQ, that you can have a conversation with your IT environment, what's running well, what's not running well, how do I fix it, etc. But the bigger part of my day-to-day job is how are we integrating AI for our own internal processes? How are we reinventing the way we create content for marketing and sales? How do we reinvent the selling process, so that customers get quotes faster, that they get to a solution faster, that our sales makers are more efficient? How do we use this with services so that customers can fix their own problems, or the problems fix themselves before they become disruptive? And then last, obviously, we have a ton of developers, and one area that we're focused on is driving developer productivity with code assistance, etc. So that's the internal side of this equation, the in and for elements of this 4-pillar framework. As it relates to what we're doing with customers is, of course, we build infrastructure solutions. We integrate hardware, software, services to solve customer problems running on those solutions. So running customer AI, you know, things that solve their business problems on our solutions. And this was a three-pillar framework that was developed by John Rose, our CTO, some years ago. But we added a category this year when we realized that ecosystem, right? Which is, we can do things on our portfolio, but we have all of these ecosystem partners. And it's not just technology partners like NVIDIA that we mentioned, or AMD, or Intel, or Meta, or Hugging Face, all of these folks that we can talk about in terms of that open ecosystem. But it's also go-to-market partners, advisories, et cetera, that might have some vertical expertise that allow us to, get in and solve a very specific customer challenge in a vertical. So those partnerships, that with side of it, is an essential part of what we're doing, both for the technical side, the ingredients, but also the solving of customer problems, the with side of it, the selling, the go-to-market side of it.
Well, and it's interesting, before we get to this next topic, what I really love about what you said is that Dell likes to, and they've done this for years, by the way, but it would be intriguing to maybe have a separate conversation with you to get into the deep dive of how Dell is deploying AI internally within the company, because that obviously makes you a better provider of that capability. Because when you're providing that to a customer, you're not like, well, okay, Mr. Customer, what would you like to use it for? You can actually, be very proactive and say, hey, here's ways, usage models that are very sensitive to security, sensitive to privacy. A lot of companies, and I am sure Dell has encountered a number of companies that love the potential of AI, but they're scared a bit in terms of how it may get deployed, and do we have to limit the use of it with internally, because it's going to create problems around this disclosure of information and roadmap data and things like that. So I think that's terrific. So when you look at customer adoption, this is going to be, I think I know it's coming, but I'd love to hear your perspective, because if it looks anything like what's happened at the macro industry level, it's got to be remarkable. But give us some flavor in terms of the way customer adoption has looked like over the past year, 12, really past 12 months, but you can go back a couple of years if you'd like.
Well, I think if we went back more than 12 to 18 months, let's just say November of, what was that, 2022. But in that before times, it was generative AI. That notion was really built around this transformer architecture, which rose out in around 2018, right? So people have certainly been working with models, and we think about ChatGPT. It was based on GPT-3. That means that there was a 1 and a 2 that came before. And many people were experimenting with those, refining them, et cetera. But I would say clearly they've become ready for broad-based prime time over the last 12 to 16 months. What we've seen over the last 12 to 16 months is in the enterprise. Let's set aside companies like OpenAI and Meta, who are building the foundation models and clearly have been working on this for a long time. But the adoption of those technologies has really been focused on experimentation. What's the art of the possible with these things? How do I apply it to different businesses? And I talk with customers, and I frankly look inside of our own organization. We have literally hundreds of experiments running across all sorts of different work streams. And that seems to be what folks are doing, is really sort of feeling out what the art of the possible is. And what we've seen is an interesting development. If you went into the year, people were talking about, hey, we're going to create our own foundation models. And it's like, actually, there's just a handful of people who are building foundation models. There are people adapting those models and refining those models through fine tuning to do different types of things, but ultimately there are a very few number of foundation models, and most folks are not in the business of building core models, training of models. Instead, what we found as we went through the years, people were like, okay, maybe we're going to fine tune models. And ultimately, what I think a lot of folks realized is, in order to infuse generative AI with the capabilities that can really impact a business, one needs to figure out how to infuse those models with their proprietary information. So the models as they are off the shelf are great at answering sort of general knowledge questions, right? They're great for, a kid doing homework. They're great for exploring topics, but they're not great at sort of working with your sort of internal
Right.
proprietary data. And so what we've seen is this shift towards, a class of capabilities that I'll put largely under augmented generation or augmented inferencing. So the most popular that people talk about today is something called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. But there are other examples. There's program assisted language generation. There are punch outs to SQL databases that allow people to bring in structured data. So all of that is, in essence, a pretty big pipeline of, frankly, traditional AI capabilities that then push into the generative engines to create really business relevant income. So we've seen this pattern of adoption shift very rapidly from folks thinking about, hey, we're going to build models, or no, actually, no, we're going to then fine tune models. And then we're like, yeah, you could do that, but the pace of data change is too high. Therefore, let's use these other techniques. And that RAG
Right.
technique is also something that was, I believe, proposed by Facebook back in around the same time that transformers were sort of taking hold in that 2018, 2019 space, but it's becoming mainstream now.
Well, let me just, because I definitely want to get to the ecosystem piece because
Sure.
it's a big part of the Dell value proposition. The AI experience largely has been a cloud-based phenomenon for the last few years. Most the average person, when they think of ChatGPT, because there's lots and lots, that's not the only application out there. There's lots of derivatives out there, but that's the one that's gotten the most attention. That's a cloud-based experience. You type in a bit of text and it spits out an answer. I write an article about a movie or whatever the story
Yeah.
might be. Now we're going into this world, and I want to get 30 seconds about you in terms of what may come, and we will talk a little bit more about that at the end of the podcast, is this whole notion of running AI on a local level,
Yeah.
and coming up with the usage models that allow Dell to go to a customer saying, hey, I want you to buy a Dell Latitude workstation or a Dell business laptop, which you make very fine PCs, and you'll never be out of that business. But with AI enabled silicon, whether it's AMD Ryzen or Intel's
Mhm.
version of chips, what in your mind are those maybe one or two usage models that are going to really be compelling, or is that something still that has to be kind of worked out? Microsoft obviously has a vaunted interest in driving that, but what's your perspective on that?
Well, yeah, this is a really important topic because I would break it down into sort of two classes, right? Because what we see, I think, over the last year, what we've seen is not necessarily bringing AI locally onto an end user device, but instead bringing it on for these many to one use cases, in which case it's running in a data center, typically on some sort of accelerated platform, leveraging, an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD accelerator or an Intel accelerator, etc. And what
Mm,
we find is people are building up these AI clouds, if you will, right? No, hard to argue with that word, but basically that platform is then used to instantiate a bunch of different many to one workloads. Think about it like sales. I need to build a set of presentations for my customers. So all of my sales makers are going into sort of one platform to then utilize that generative capability to create that content. A marketer's going in to create a blog or whatever. We're leveraging an on-prem code assistant capability that all of our developers are using to help with the production of net new software.
right.
Those are the types of solutions that we predominantly are seeing deployed today. The one-to-one productivity solutions on device, I would say today is being done with power users. The members of my team are running models locally all day long. You have things like of course Microsoft Copilot that you highlighted. I think we'll see a blossoming of that personal productivity on device in next year, especially as more of that sort of chip level acceleration gets built into processors themselves without needing a whole lot of acceleration externally. But I would say the business end of adoption right now is on-prem
Prem, yeah.
large implementations with multiple servers, multiple accelerators, sort of creating this, if you will, Gen AI inferencing cloud around which you can build those RAG pipelines that I described to create outcomes. And those are the conversations that I'm having, literally, you know, a handful of them every week, or actually sometimes it's multiple handfuls of conversations, and helping customers do that on premises. Because you mentioned that security, all of that stuff, you know, when you move these open source models or even commercial models on premises, you gain a tremendous amount of control over the nature of that model.
And that's where I think the opportunity is going to be, is that there are
Absolutely.
companies, what they value the privacy, the security advantages that go along with that. And by the way, from a device standpoint, the implication is that if you do run some of that stuff locally, there might be some, you know, for a smartphone, certainly for a PC, there might be some battery life and energy optimization benefits that you derive out of that, rather than
Sure,
having the
sure.
cloud all the time. But you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. But I would say that the moving out of those hosted model as a service, some folks call it,
yep,
to this on-premise implementation, can really have a massive, massive
yes.
cost, quality, security. I could go on. Lots of
Performance, yes.
advantages.
No, I agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about the open ecosystem approach.
Sure.
You know, that's always been a Dell, you know, philosophy going back 30 years. You know,
I
um,
think since the dawn of the company, which is now well over 30 years. So
yeah. So I mean, it's not a new strategy. It's gotten a bit more complex because there are more partners out there. And by the way, Dell has to sometimes make bets. You know, they you can't be so wide open that, you know, that you don't have the resources to support a relationship with every open system partner that you'd like to be part of your value proposition. But there's a great slide that you prepared that I want to bring up here, because it really gives you a snapshot of, this is significant. This is not, hey, one or two partners. This is pretty much a, you know, a snapshot of the industry.
yeah, and I would say that this every day we're adding to this, right? I could rattle off other partners that have not yet been captured into the marketing materials, but yes, it's a big part of what you're doing, of what we're doing. And I think I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, which is, look, we are in, I wouldn't even say we're in the early innings. We're like at batting practice, or
Oh
showing.
yeah, no, I absolutely right.
And foreclosing that on some sort of vertical rifle shot through the industry early on, I think flies in the face of what we've all experienced in these different waves of major technology disruption, which is early on, there are literally hundreds of people doing amazing, amazing, you know, invention and innovation and driving new capabilities. So we believe it's important to keep this ecosystem wide open. Now, are we going to build a skewed up solution with every single, you know, person out there in the world? Of course not. But we do have, you know, sort of an opinionated view that if you're going to do this, here are a set of partners that we are working with to make that easy to do, right? But at the same time, we're open to the fact that, gosh, I mean, there's hundreds, probably thousands of open source projects doing amazing things to make this much easier to use, more energy efficient, more, you know, like, one thing that I would say is unique about our point of view is everyone keeps talking about bigger and bigger, larger and larger, billions and billions, maybe trillions of parameters. We're kind of like, no, 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 no. That's based on how stuff is getting adopted. You can actually go with a much smaller model with a much smaller computational footprint and get amazing results because it's the way people are using it. Those
Right.
billions of parameters are knowledge parameters, but it's not knowledge about your business. So why have them integrated? Instead, use that RAG pipeline to infuse your data into the generation of an outcome, and oh, by the way, do so at, you know, a much greater level of efficiency. So yeah, we are working with folks across the sort of foundation model space, the derived model space, Hugging Face. If you go there today, you'll find literally, I think I found 50,000 conversational models. You know, you go into machine vision, there's another, you know, tens of thousands. There's hundreds of thousands of derivative models available that sort of get you further on your way to your use case, which is why we very quickly partnered with Hugging Face, because they're, if you're a practitioner, if you're a data scientist, you know, a lot of people would say, Hugging what? If you say that to a practitioner in this space, they're going to be like, of course, that's where I'm going every day. And then Meta, it seems like an unlikely partnership for enterprise AI adoption, but that great gift of the Llama and the Llama 2 family of foundation models allows people to do a tremendous amount of innovation with their own fine-tuned models on premises. And if you go look at that Hugging Face set of models, many of them are derived from the work that Meta's done with Llama, or what a French
Yes.
company called Mistral that we're working with has done with their foundation model, which, by the way, is only 7 billion parameters and does some amazing things. So yeah, across the board, we're working with, I mentioned NVIDIA, Intel, AMD. We're working with Red Hat. We're working with IBM. Obviously, the two are combined, but they provide different roles within the stack. And as you can see, we're working with Starburst in terms of that distributed SQL querying, which a lot of people are like, why are you doing, how does that apply to generative AI? Well, in business use cases, we see these workflows punching out to structured databases to integrate, say, customer account data, or information on a service ticket, so that you can easily find it. Hey, what's the status of my service incident? In a conversational context. Well, you got to punch out to that SQL database. So it's sort of it's a very wide ecosystem, and we're really proud about that fact because.
Well, and by the way, and I want to, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure we hit the last topic here, but the only way you get to the word you use, and I use that word quite a bit, the democratization of the category, is by having these partner relationships. Now that does translate, of course, to lowering costs, because at the end of the day, when you look at the kind of solutions that are sold in the data centers, the way you really get breadth is by lowering costs and making that value proposition much more interesting to pursue. So you only can do that vis-a-vis having these type of partnerships. So I think that's it's amazingly expansive, and it's just very impressive to see. So on the last topic, we got to talk about this. Put on your, I wouldn't say put on your tinfoil hat.
Tinfoil hat.
Probably have one. There's probably a tinfoil hat somewhere in your office. Where does Dell believe all this is going? Because I have to tell you, I have been around a long time. You've been around a long time. I have never seen a category this hot. And I think that's great for Dell. I think it's great for America. I think it's great for the world. There's some things that are going to be a consequence of AI that I'm not really that crazy about in terms of deep fakes. We won't get into that, but that's obviously a concern. And by the way, I also know that that's a concern for Dell as well. Dell's not oblivious to that. So I want to make sure that's clear. But where do you see this whole thing going?
Yeah, well, let me start on the first thing what you last landed on, which is, look, we're technology optimists, but we're not Pollyanna, right? So we're looking at this with a discriminating eye to say, hey, how can this be done in the most responsible way possible?
Yeah.
And how do we help our customers figure that out? So let's just sort of set that aside. We think this will do a massive amount of good for society. But of course, again, we're not Pollyanna about the fact that there are implications that we need to work through, and we'll work through those, and we'll help our customers come up with their policy for doing it the way they believe it's most aligned with their values. But I'll go back to the first question of, what have we seen? We've seen a lot of experimentation. I think this next year is making this real and building real tremendous business value with it. I think we're gonna, folks are gonna, sort of trip over a few things along the way, and we'll be there to help them, guide them through those challenges. It's not just land a model and off you go. There's a lot of data preparation that needs to be done. There's a lot of that more traditional AI capability that you need to put in front of it for that pipeline. I'll just keep coming back to the one that's really popular and in the discussions, that RAG pipeline. How do you build that? How do you get into the data sources to make it real? So I think that things are headed towards, let's take that experimentation, and now let's bring it down to brass tacks. How are we going to use this to improve our customer experiences? How are we going to use this to create efficiency across our processes? How are we going to use this, say in the clinical context for medicine? How are we going to use this to sort of radically improve patient outcomes and improve their experience? We've got a great use case that we can highlight of work we're doing with Northwestern Medicine with radiological reads. So it's just and the value that provides to the practitioner, to the patient, and frankly to the business of doing medicine, to doing healthcare. So we think it's going to have a huge impact on society, but we're going to go through this year pivoting from experimentation as an industry to making it real and making it have it real impact on businesses, on practices, on verticals, on your experience of going to a store. It's going to be everywhere, and I'm tremendously excited about it. And of course, back to what we were saying before, we that discriminating eye. Let's make sure we do it the right way and help customers do it the right way.
Well, Matt, I am sure I have a feeling that I'll have you on the podcast once again in the not too distant future. This was a fantastic discussion, and I just think that it's so exciting and it's wonderful to hear what Dell is doing, both not on the value and not just on the value and strategy standpoint, but also from a democratization standpoint, because I think that's going to be key to making sure that the potential is optimized as much as possible. Matt, again, thanks for taking the time to join me for today's podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, thanks for making the SmartTechCheck podcast part of your day or commute. Please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these convenient on-screen QR codes to connect with me. You could also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Mark Vena Tech Guy. And until next time, Matt, have a great week, and thanks again for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.